In this lesson, we are going to examine how to create sub-weldments. Breaking a large weldment into sub-weldments makes it easier to manage the model. And to demonstrate this, we will be using two files, Workbench Complete and Workbench Drawing, and both of these can be found in your Working Files folder. Now, let's expand the cut list. And before we create a sub-weldment, it's important to note that sub-weldments can include any entity listed in the cut list folder, including structural members, plates, end caps, gussets, weld beads, along with structural members trimmed with the Trim Extend tool. The first step is to select the items that will become part of the sub-weldment. Now there's two methods for doing this. The first is to select the items directly from the cut list. So if I expand a couple of these folders here, I can use the Shift key or Control key to group select. I'm going to hold down the Control key and select a few of the items in the cut list. I right mouse click, and in this menu, I have Create Sub Weldment. Now the issue I have with this method is, as you're selecting the items from the cut list, you also have to be watching the screen and look for the highlighted structural members so you know what you're selecting. What I believe is an easier and better method is to use the filter option. But first of all, we have to turn the filters on. How do we turn filters on? One method is to right mouse click on top of a ribbon, and near the bottom of it, you see the option Selection Filter. And at the bottom of the screen, the filter toolbar appears. A keyboard shortcut for turning this toolbar on is F5. So if I tap F5, the filter toolbar turns off. F5 one more time, the filter toolbar is back on. The filter we're looking for is Filter Solid Bodies. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, rotate the model, and holding down the Control key, I'm going to select the items on the upper half of this workbench. And as I continue to hold down the Control key, I'll select the 5 supporting members. Now right mouse click and select Create Sub Weldment. You see in the Feature Manager tree cut list, I have Sub Weldment 1. Now the next step is to go to the drawing and insert a cut list table. But before we do that, notice it's shown that we need to update the cut list. So I'm going to right mouse click, select Update, and now I'm ready to go to the drawing. Select Annotation, the table's drop-down icon, and there's Weldment Cut List. It's prompting me to select a view to base the cut list from, so I'll select this view. Property Manager appears. We will go with the default settings. I'm going to click OK, and I'll place the cut list on the drawing. Just so we know what we're looking at here, I am going to auto balloon our weldment view, select OK. Now notice in the cut list table, we are missing some of the fields for items 7 through 10. So let's take a look at what items 7 through 10 are. Item 7 is the workbench top. Item 8 are the gussets. 9 are the base plates. And 10 is the sub weldment. Now even though it's not propagating the field for item number 10, the sub weldment, you may be expecting to see in the cut list table all of the structural members that make up the sub weldment. However, this is similar to a bill of material which lists sub-assemblies only. Unlike bill of materials, we do not have the option in cut list tables to list the components that make up a sub weldment. What we need to do is to create a part file of the sub weldment and then create a drawing for that new part file. Then, when we add a cut list table, we will see all of the structural members that make up this sub weldment. So how do we do that? Let's go back to the part file. I am going to close this Workbench Complete part file and reopen it. And this time, instead of creating a sub weldment, I am going to group select the part by holding down the Control key like I did earlier. Right mouse clicking, and instead of selecting Create Sub Weldment, I am going to select Insert into New Part. What you see on the left-hand side of the screen is a Property Manager for Insert into New Part. And notice as we look through this Property Manager, here's all of the bodies that make up this upper structure of the weldment. What we want to do is put a check mark inside of Cut List Properties too. And we want to make sure the radio button Cut List Properties is active. By doing this allows us to insert a cut list table into the drawing. So I'm going to say OK. It's prompting us to assign a file name to this new part file. So I'm going to go with the default and click on Save. From this point, I am going to create a new drawing from this new part file. So I'm going to click in the drop-down file, Make Drawing from Part, and let's select an ANSI A3 landscape and say OK. I'm going to pull in a trimetric view, click OK. I'm on the annotation ribbon, select the table's icon drop-down, and there's my weldment cut list. Select OK, and there's my new cut list for this new part file, listing all of the structural members that make up this weldment. Now we do see item number 3 field is not populated. That's because it's an end cap, and that would need to be added manually. Before I conclude this lesson, it is important to note that whether you create a sub-weldment or create a new part file, that any changes that you make to that parent weldment file will propagate to the sub-weldment and will propagate to this new part file. And this concludes our lesson on creating sub-weldments.